Welcome to Get Even. Get Even is the podcast where Even founders Ellen and Nora, that's me, sit down with incredible women who've been there, done that in the world of business. Get Even is your backstage pass to their lived experience. You'll hear raw insights, personal stories, and the realities of success. Whether you're looking for inspiration, practical advice, or a peek behind the curtain of what it really takes to thrive, this podcast is for women ready to go further. It's time to get even. We've got an amazing conversation lined up for you today. Our guest today is Linda Brown, who was named EY's Australian Entrepreneur of the Year in 2022. This episode is a must listen, a must watch. If you've ever found yourself unsure about whether something difficult could be done, it's a must watch if you're feeling a bit stuck. And this conversation will show you that you've always got choices that you can make. You've always got your own power. And if you're true to your own North Star, and if you really know what you're all about, you can achieve amazing things. Let me tell you a bit more about Linda. Linda was the founding CEO and president of Torrens University Australia, which she created from scratch. And she transformed it into the country's fastest growing university with a global impact. She's got a diverse leadership background spanning private, public, and government sectors. She was Deputy Vice Chancellor at Swinburne University and a senior executive in Queensland's Department of Education. Linda's expertise, as you'll hear, lies in technology-led innovation, in global citizenship, and in employability. She's recognised as one of 25 Australian women to watch, and she continues to shape the future of education and leadership worldwide. She's an absolute inspiration, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to have Linda Brown with us today. Linda, a very warm welcome to Even.
Thank you. It's just an absolute privilege to be here. Thank you, Nora.
So I really want to hear about your career story. I've been a huge admirer of your work for some time, as you know, and for our community on Even, really want to introduce how you've made the career pivots that you've made, how you've taken really, first of their kind roles, how you've shaped industries. So I want to hear in that career spanning education, business, innovation. You've been known as a change maker, as a disruptor. You've been EY's Australian Entrepreneur of the Year winner 2021. With that kind of backstory, what were some of the pivotal moments that shaped your leadership journey?
I think if I go way back, I came from a tiny little village in Scotland, and was blessed to have an amazing mum and dad who kind of just expected you to get on and try anything. And if you failed, that was okay, and try it again. So I had that behind me, I think, which is always really good. And when you look at not just myself, you actually look at my sister as well. She's actually the pocket rocket. She just got the Public Service Medal in New South Wales and runs all the prison hospitals. So she's amazing. We've both kind of had very service-orientated careers because of our background. And we've both traveled widely and really taken risks, and more so, I think, opportunities when we've seen them. So coming from that great background, to be honest, in Scotland, and then traveling and, trying different jobs and different roles, I think that grows your confidence into trying something new.
And what about, so you said there was a tolerance for risk. It was okay to fail or to experiment. But were there any times in your career where you made a move that felt perhaps risky at the time, but in hindsight paid off?
I think if I haven't done that every 2 to 3 years, I start to get the jitters. I've actually just finished with Torrens. Now I'm on the board, and I've obviously been there for 13 years since founding it. So that's the longest I've ever stayed in any one place. But even when I go back to after I finished my degree, my first job, which I actually got offered when I went to get a mortgage, was with Abbey National Building Society. And with them, they were doing an adult leadership program called Operation Rally. You probably remember Prince William did it. So from Scotland, I came out to Australia for 3 months to do Operation Rally and learned lots then. And then they were moving into stockbroking, and I moved into Fidelity. So I've always been kind of somebody who's, I think we all have opportunities. And I think there's a difference between seeing the opportunity and taking that leap into the opportunity. And that's something that I've always done, I think, is it doesn't matter if it's sideways or it's not a hierarchical move. If it's interesting and it's going to expand my reach and my impact and I'm going to learn, then I've jumped straight into that. And I think I've done that 3 or 4 times during my career.
Nice. I think that's a lovely filter actually, to sort of evaluate, is this interesting? Is it going to expand my learning, my horizon? Am I going to meet new people? Am I going to experience new things? There's one thing that I want to sort of reflect on with you a bit, which is, the thing that you've done with Torrens, which is you've done something that seems almost impossible. You created Torrens University, which is Australia's only private for-profit university. You grew it from, I actually just want to emphasize this for everyone, from 164 students to, my notes tell me over 20,000, but it's probably actually outdated at this point. And it says over 118 countries. That might actually be still growing. I mean, how do you talked about your background, you talked about how your parents nurtured that element of exploration, risk taking. But how do you think more people can be encouraged to actually do the impossible? What does it take?
I think a lot of it is about who you surround yourself with. We all know them. There's people out there whose glass is always half empty, who always find a kind of why not to or why you shouldn't. And I think I was always told to marry up, to make sure that the people who I spent time with and were friends with and were people that I aspired to be, learned something from. And were different from me as well. And I think that is a big part of it. That was a big part of Torrens. I mean, if you think, we have a beautiful public university system in Australia, there's nothing wrong with it. It's incredible. And I was a big part of that as DVC at Swinburne. I worked for Queensland government. I created Metro South Institute of TAFE. So since I came into Australia, I've always been a change maker. But for me, Torrens was something incredible. There was all these smart people in Torrens, and the owner and laureate, and they currently own 56 universities all over the world. And they were very into service and very into impact. So they matched up with my values, even though they were private. And I had a big problem with that at the start because I always thought I was going to disrupt the public system and make it better for masses and masses of people. But I think you've just got to really know who you are in your soul and what your North Star is and stay true to that, because once you've lost your integrity, you've lost everything. And surround yourself with incredible people. I say the only superpower I've got is surrounding myself with phenomenal talent. And I think that that's really important. And out of that comes opportunity. Because people will then ask you to do things that other people won't do. And if you're willing to lean in and jump in, then you get the opportunity.
Yeah, that's fabulous advice. I think just being selective about who you surround yourself with, because like you said, we could quite easily, surround ourselves with people who do say the glass is half full. That's very easily done. But finding those people who actually do believe in possibilities and then help you to achieve greater things, I think that's really fabulous advice.
But I also got really good advice. I mean, as you probably know, when you read the bio, Bill Clinton came and opened it for us, and he was the Chancellor for Laureate at the time. I mean, how incredible is that? And when I was speaking to the founder of Laureate, which is an even bigger story, Doug Becker, when he asked me to build a university for him, he said, I know you've been in education for 18 years, but I want you to put everything that you know in your back pocket, and I want you to keep it there. And I want you to travel around the world and look at everything we do. And then I want you to come back and mix it all together and create me a new university. And that was super advice because, especially as a female, when you're climbing up the tree, and you're climbing up that career tree, we all feel, well, it's a female thing. You feel you have to know 200% more than anybody else to say you're an expert. And we also have to work really super hard to prove ourselves. So we tend to go into companies or go into new positions already quite accomplished because we would never apply unless we knew how to do it. That's our first big barrier. And then when we go in, we want to run and we want to show and add value and do it really, really quickly. And I think that's been one of my biggest learnings, is just slow down and take the expectation off yourself and listen properly and learn from others, you know? So I think I was very blessed at that time with the new university. I think it did as much for me as I did for them, because it really taught me that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. And you really do have to listen to your people and give them an opportunity to thrive as well. And don't feel you have to do it really quickly, because I think we put that pressure on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, how wonderful that you were given that space and that time to explore, and for somebody to have that sort of patience and vision to give you, to
Well, I
encourage
think
you
I
to.
think it was more than that. I think they were incredibly astute and realized, for all the strengths that I had, one of my weaknesses it was, I'm a fixer. I want to get in, I want to fix it, I want to move fast, I want to fail fast, I want to move on. And they were actually taking my weakness and saying, okay, we get all this side of you, but we are actually giving you permission to do this in a different way and to slow down and to learn from that. And what a gift was that?
Yeah. That's an act of leadership as well, to see that in you, and to really think about how to get the best out of you. Incredible.
Yeah, it's very good.
Do you have any other stories where you've been given great advice that you've come back to time and time again over the course of your career?
Yeah, I think one of the other things that I was told very early on was not to wait to be invited. And you hear me saying that all the time. Even I was at a big Ag Futures conference in the last 2 days, and one of the young guys who was working for one of the big companies came running out and said, I need some help. I need some help. I'm in this company. I've been in there, typical kind of 20-year-old. I've been there a year and I'm not getting anywhere and I don't know what to do. And I'm like, oh, God, I said, well, that's part of your problem, mate. Just slow down a little bit. But I said, the other thing is, don't wait to be invited. You've been listening today about problems in agriculture and trying to get women into agriculture and how we can change that. What could you do? You could go back and speak to your school, go to your boss and say, you've got a career, you would like to help this problem. You could set up a little group and you could do it. So be proactive. Don't wait to be invited, and don't think it's because it's not in your job title, you're not going to add benefit. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something that's always stuck with me, that the opportunities that I've been given haven't come from the job I'm doing now. They've always come from something tangential. They've maybe come from, a women's networking event, or they've come from volunteering through something to do with the kids' school. Or so it's keeping your eyes open for these opportunities, which don't tend to come from traditional means. It's not a natural progression. So I think the other big thing I think that's really important is to know where you ideally want to end up. Because it's like anything, isn't it? If you don't know where you want to be in 5 years or 10 years, how are you ever going to get there? You might not end up there. You might end up somewhere else. There's that old saying, isn't there? Something like reach for the moon and you hit the stars, or is it the other way around? I never know. But at least you're reaching for something. And I feel strategy is the same. You have to have a strategy. Whether you hit that KPI or hit that strategy is almost irrelevant. It's almost like a rudder for your yacht to point you in a direction. And I think the biggest gift I was ever given was the opportunity to work with Gallup Strengths. I don't know if you've ever come across that. Yeah. I had no idea, right? And then when we had all these at that time, I think we had 10,000 students. And I'm like, how can I get these students to talk industry? Because there's a big issue between education and industry. And I was introduced through a friend to Gallup Strengths. And I was like, if I can get all my students to do Gallup Strengths, then that gives them their 5 top strengths. And then when they go for an interview, they can talk about what their strengths are and they can give examples. But again, that was a gift, because the other thing that Gallup does, as you know, because you know it, is it tells you when your strength can also be a weakness. So one of my biggest strengths is an enabler. Yeah. But the weakness in that is you're either in my club or you're not. And if you feel like you're not in my club and not my side, that can be quite alienating. That can be quite horrible. Do you know what I mean? So I had to work on that. So I think it's having your eyes kind of open to opportunities and things that if you develop yourself and you're honest about your strengths and weaknesses, and you can match them to something you want to achieve or serve or the impact you want to have, your North Star, then I don't think you'll go far wrong. And my North Star is everybody's got the right to an education. That's it. It's not fancy. It's not anything else. Why should my education, or I get an education because I've got money, or I live in a beautiful country, compared to some people who don't even get to go to school? So for me, that will always be my North Star.
That's beautifully clear. And there's so much in what you've just shared. And what actually strikes me is there's a remarkable degree of consistency as well. So we've now interviewed about 50 or so women at Even, many of them CEOs, others are professors or they're leaders in technology. But really what's consistent is the message of you're going to have the biggest impact, not by doing what's in your job description, but by actually identifying the things that nobody wants to step into that specific problem, but it's actually the one that's really going to drive a company or to drive an organization forward, which I think your story is reminiscent of that too.
There's a bit of a worry with that too, though, right, Nora? Because there's a thing and your women need to look at it. Everybody knows about the glass ceiling. There's also research that was done by Exeter University and other universities on the glass cliff. Have you ever heard about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So women like me or other women tend to get given the top job or the CEO job, and we've got lots of examples of this in Australia and across the world, when the job is risky and people think it's impossible. And men, which is a benefit for us, some guys think, I'm not going to take the risk. Do you know what I mean? Because it'll affect my career long term. Whereas we're like, give us a chance. You know what I mean? So this glass cliff syndrome, again, could look like a half glass full syndrome. But if you turn it on its head and say, okay, I know I'm going to get this opportunity. I'm not going to beat myself up over it if it doesn't work. You know, I'm going to give it my damn best to try to do it. And if you succeed, well, look what happens. You become Entrepreneur of the Year. So I think it's a phenomenal headspace to kind of be kind to yourself in that. Because if you weren't and you didn't, and you failed through no problem with your own, it was just such a risky thing to do, you could really take that negatively. So I think you've got to be kind to yourself if you're going to do this job.
Yeah, I think you're vulnerable. And then, like you said, sometimes you win, you become Entrepreneur of the Year, but sometimes also you're in that really vulnerable position. So, I mean, it's an awkward conversation to have, but actually, I think that's sort of the reality for women CEOs, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is definitely. And it's a pattern across the world. So you've got to know yourself really well. You know what I mean? And if you're willing to lean in and not wait to be invited and put your hand up and do it. I've seen, there's another side to that where if you don't have the resilience and it's not courage, but you don't have that, it doesn't align to your values or it's not where your ultimate end point wants to be, then you can actually do yourself a lot of harm in there. Do you know what I mean? And lose your confidence. And you wouldn't want anybody to be in that situation.
No. Yeah. No, I think that's the other thing is what can we do to actually support each other then when that happens and when there are these public teardowns or whatever it might be. I think that's a big question. I want to ask you about bad advice. So I'm sure, I've received some bad advice over the course of my career. I'm sure you have as well. What's some advice that you've happily ignored?
There's advice I took that I didn't happily ignore that I had to re-gear myself around, which was, one of the best things that CEOs can do is get a phenomenal people manager that will take care of that side of the business for you. It's the take care of that side of the business. So I did that. I brought somebody in who was phenomenal HR talent manager who said, I'll look after your people. And I went, great. They've got that. I don't need to worry about that. Worst thing I ever did in my whole entire life. It was almost like subcontracting out your people management. Yeah, never will do it again because that's your lifeblood. Do you know what I mean? That connection and that understanding, and not just the understanding of your direct reports, what I call drop downs, the next layer and the next layer and what makes people tick. So that for me was advice that I got. You're doing too much. You're, mama bear, you're looking after all yourself. I'm going to look after this part of the business for you. You don't need to worry about it. And I probably let it go for about 6 months and then went, oh my God, what have I done? Do you know what I mean? And that wasn't because the person was incompetent or didn't know what they were doing or whatever. I did that. I allowed that to happen. I allowed the management and the leadership of our talent to be subcontracted out. And I would never do that again. So that was.
How did you have that humility to sort of reflect and to go, that was a mistake?
I didn't have the humility. That was the worst part. So the bit that we do a lot of matrix. So the staff they told me in the engagement survey, they told me in Glassdoor, they told me in emails, they told me do you know what I mean? And, I was getting told, well, it's okay. It's just a transition. We're so used to you being involved and now you're not, whatever. And I believed that. My ego allowed me to believe that because I'd gone up the ladder and, so to be honest, I had to go, my God, I've screwed up here big time. And then I had to go in and say, I'm just really, really sorry. I'm never going to do that again. You've been telling me for a while, but I haven't been listening, and enough's enough. You know what I mean? And I'm going to have to stop and recalibrate. And this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to try really hard. And if it doesn't work, you need to tell me. You know what I mean? That was a real learning for me. Because the thing that I'd always been, I've got people, crazy people who come and work with me all over the place. Do you know what I mean? Because of that fast-paced community that we build, and because I love talent. And if you've got talent, you get out their way and you let them do their job. Do you know what I mean? But it was a real learning for me at that point in time. My whole management style or leadership style had changed. And part of that was about thinking I had to prove myself to be like the other leaders of university rather than being authentic. So it was a very, very big lesson for me. And I wish I had the nous to say I picked it up, but I didn't. It took me a while, but when it hit me, I was like, God, and I just came clean, I'm sorry, I have dropped the ball in this and you need to help me get back to where we all want to be. So that's what happened.
But even still, to have the awareness and the courage to actually say, I got it wrong, or even to be reading Glassdoor reviews, to be listening to stuff and to say, if it happens again, tell me. I mean, that to me, I've not seen that, very often in the sector that we've both been in. That's actually very unusual.
Yeah, I think so. But I think the thing about Torrens, and I say this to everybody, is this was a brand new university. It was non-unionized. It was non-tenured. As you know, universities are reputational houses. It's about your research. It's about your reputation. And here were people, emeritus professors. I had one of the largest percentages of emeritus professors that came and worked for me when I opened Torrens. Because I would phone them and say, I know you're at the end of your career. Do you want to come and play? We want to create something that is dynamically different, but still is good quality education, but affordable and flexible and choice. And they're like, yeah, I'll come. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that they were courageous enough to leave tenured jobs, to come and try something new was fantastic. And even the students, you think about our 20,000 students, every single one of them is courageous because they're coming to a university that's not, one that mum and dad went to or gran and grandpa know, or, it's because of their passion for their discipline or to be industry partnered. So I think I take that really seriously. And I also knew responsibility, good Scottish girl, and the responsibility of creating the first privately funded, because Notre Dame and Bond are both not-for-profits, they're foundations. So this was a NASDAQ listed university with stakeholders. And for me, if we got it wrong, there was never going to be another one, and that then if you go back to my North Star, that meant that we put 100,000 people through now. That would have been 100,000 people that would never have got an education or been able, because we didn't have that alternative university. So for me, it was the North Star of getting it to high quality, affordable industry linked education that helped people live better. And everybody's got a right to education. We got rid of ATARs, we got rid of entry scores, and we did a lot of things really differently. And for me, it was all part of getting to that North Star, because if we could do it here, then we could. I'm helping the Indonesian government just now. We're working on a brand new university in China. So for me, it's transferable once you've got the model right, so it's really important.
It sounds like you have a lifelong calling, and I can really resonate with that, because that's actually, I mean, part of what we're doing with Even as well is we found, my background is more of a specific business school background, but we found that it wasn't designed for women. It wasn't, it was too expensive for women. The ways of delivering some of that business school education was not accessible for women. They would have to do it after work,
Yeah.
find somebody to look after the kids as well. And so that's why we actually said with Even, let's start from scratch. What would it look like if you had, the sort of quality and subjects that you get in a business school education, but designed by women, completely, delivered by women and just for women. So that I really resonate with that purpose of how do you make that everybody should have access to? How do you make that much more affordable? How do you design it in such a way that people can actually engage with it in the course of their lives rather than having to put everything else on hold?
And I think what you're doing too, Nora, and it's there's two fundamental things that people say to me, what are the two things that have really helped this become what it was? Caring, right? So putting yourself in the other person's shoes, exactly as you said. Who can do a course between 6 and 9 on a Wednesday night? And you know what I mean? And then you've got to juggle everything. So putting yourself in the other person's shoes, even though it might not be what you want to do. And I think the other thing is, especially with the workforce, is creating a place of safety to experiment.
Mm.
So a place that's really safe to fail, that you're not going to get into trouble because you tried something and it didn't work. And you have to hide that. And then you can tell everybody if it works, but you've got to pretend that, you didn't try if it fails. And for me, that just kills innovation. I think those two things are critical to any kind of entrepreneurial venture or creation of innovation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more actually on that topic. I do want to ask you, because you do have a unique perspective about building skills for the future. And I am thinking, the women who are in our community, so with us, we're learning about future skills. So whether that's AI, whether it's foundational knowledge of data and using data for decision making in organizations, but we're also talking about the things that are just happening in the course of life. So we talk about finance at home, we talk about managing the mental load, we talk about menopause or
Yeah.
fertility. It's kind of everything that happens over the course of a woman's career, and the different things that will help you to stand out, but also the things that will help you just to navigate what it's like being a woman and having a career. Yeah, what would be your advice on where would you focus your skill development if you were starting your career again now? So if you were, say in your late 20s, in your 30s, thinking about preparing yourself for your future career.
Yeah, I don't think it's about starting my career again. I think I'm doing it now, because you have to pivot all the time, right? So, I was never great at technology. I didn't mind it, but I wasn't a technology geek and it did what it needed to do for me. I didn't really care how it worked as long as it did what I needed it to do for the business. But now I'm really starting to learn again and really starting to listen to the kind of ethical side of AI and how, as a leader, you have a responsibility around ethics and the humanistic element to AI. And I think women are going to be exceptional in that space. Don't go and learn to code. Who gives a damn about code? It's everybody, you pay somebody to go and code. But in a leadership role, actually understanding the ethics, the dynamics around AI and what it's going to do to the world. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the kind of poverty gap's going to get bigger because those who've got money can access it will move faster. Those who can't will get left further behind. How do we deal with that? So for me, learning is continuous all the time. But I think it's a necessity now. It's not a nice to have anymore. It's a necessity to be up to date, at least on the opportunities and the challenges that technology can bring. And that's just listening to podcasts, listening to people's opinions and forming your own view, from all of that. So I think that's really important. And I think ethics is becoming an even bigger thing. I mean, there's such a trust crisis in business and there's a trust crisis in education. So how do you as a leader ensure that you are truthful and that you are creating trust? Because I think that's the biggest challenge the industry's got at this point in time.
Mm.
And as I say, once you lose that integrity, you can't get it back again. So for me, it's like, it's the impact of that and the societal change that that's going to bring. And how are you going to have a North Star within that? And what's your negotiables and non-negotiables? And then, and part of that was almost like when we went through COVID before I sold Torrens to SCI. You know, I said, Doug Becker knew who he got in me, and I'd done incredibly well for him. And I said, this is the start of COVID. We've got 50% international students. The market's shut. I am not going to pay somebody off. So, and I'm not taking any government money. Well, we wouldn't get it anyway. So I said, we're going to keep everybody working and everybody learning. And that was a very simple statement, but that took away all the stress from our workforce and took away the stress from our students. And we grew 25% during COVID because of that integrity and that value and that very clear, this is it. This is what we're going to do. You know, we'll sell a building before we'll pay people off during COVID. And I think that was an aha moment for me. That was a moment when I felt like all the work I've done and all the crazy jobs and all the crazy things I've done up to today has been worth it, because it's put me in this position now that I can look after, I think 200,000 people we were looking after at that time, because we did 150,000 free short courses to people who were not working so that they could reskill. So for me, that was an aha moment, really. Yeah.
Wow. I'm hearing a lot about your sense of purpose. Your North Star just keeps coming through, but I'm also hearing this sense of innovation and just, tenacity as well. I want to translate that to, thinking about other women who might be uneven and they might be preparing for or aspiring to a leadership role like you've held. So you've had, the CEO role at Torrens or DVC roles before.
Yeah.
What else can you share with the women around skill sets or mindsets, or just how can they get ready for that?
Yeah, I think the other thing that I've not talked about is partnerships. Like the worst thing that you can do is sell your soul to work for somebody who is making you unhappy or who does not fit with your values. And that's really easy for somebody like me to say, who's got choices and opportunity. But I believe everybody's got choices and opportunity. Do you know what I mean? Even if you're working for a really bad boss, you can start looking for something else so you feel empowered. Or you can do other things outside that fuel you up. That means that that's limited in the effect that it's having on you. So for me, one of the things that I've been really lucky about is that I think about some of the bosses that I've had, and they have been stunning. And the bad bosses that I've had have been awful. So they've been so awful that I've gone, I'm out of there. Do you know what I mean? So it's been quite polarizing for me. I've never been a kind of muddy middle person, as you can probably guess. So I've never been in a situation where I'm going, I'll just stick it out. It might get better or whatever. I tend to be black or white. You know what I mean? And I know I'm getting value from this. I'm adding value to this. Therefore, I'm in. I'm not going to change myself to accommodate something that I don't believe in. Do you know what I mean? And I think we've got to get better at that. I think we compromise a lot. And we think, well, it fits in with the kids, or it's the right time, or it's near home, or it's whatever. And I think I probably did that when I had Cameron and Logan a little bit as well. But I think there's so much opportunity out there to get your juice from somewhere else, even if it's to feel in control. Is so important to a female. Do you know what I mean? It's critical, because 9 times out of 10 we're servicing everybody else. So how do we look after ourselves, and how do we feel and control ourselves? And it can be really silly things. And I speak a lot about at domestic abuse workshops and things like that, because I used to be a ambassador for Kids Helpline, and even putting £5 away, £5, I could tell I've just come back from Scotland again, and $5 away in a jar, you know what I mean, that nobody knows where it is. Something, just a tiny first step, even if you're unhappy in your career or you're looking for another career. And the other thing that women don't do is bloody tell anybody. So if you're sitting there and you're in a job and you really want to be X, yeah, and you've got a career path and you want to get there, you don't let anybody know. We think that they're going to read our mind and they're going to know when that job comes up, it's something that we would like to consider. So being very determined and very measured in conversations and in your plan, and having a safe person, maybe not your boss, but a safe person within the company to share your desires and aspirations with, so that you're on the horizon. You're not shocked when somebody didn't ask you to do it. Because 9 times out of 10, it's because they didn't know we wanted to.
Yeah,
So I think
absolutely.
that's something we're not particularly good at. So for me, choice, the one thing I've been able to give my kids, and the one thing and the students, I think, is choice. And that's the most important thing for me. If you've got the choice to study or the choice to do something, even if you don't want it, doesn't matter. But having that choice is so empowering. So for me, that's what you're trying to do at work. You're trying to surround yourself with really positive people, and you're trying to make sure that you're leaning in, and you might be in a shit job now, but something sexy might be happening across here, or you might be thinking about something across here that you could volunteer for or start up, or even have 4 or 5 people at lunch do we have lunches anymore, who actually are talking about something that you're in together, even a flipping book club. It's widening your circle of influence. And that circle of influence is what leads you to jobs like mine. Because building that circle of influence, and I'm a phenomenal networker, but I don't network to get back. Yeah. So I network to give. So the time when I'm really networking is when I'm saying, "Oh, I was thinking of you today because I met somebody and they would be really good for you." And you network when you don't need anything back. Yeah. And that then creates trust, and that creates a circle of influence and a circle of friends and advisors who are honest and courageous, because it's not a trade, that becomes so important in a woman's career.
I love that. And I have to say, this is one of the things that has really surprised me, as well as I hear it again and again now, is women saying to me and to Ellen, I'm no good at networking. I don't know how to start networking. And then every now and then I see people might be going through redundancy or through something like that. And it's sort of then when they start to think about, who do I know? Who should I be having a coffee with? Should I be starting to put stuff on LinkedIn? And it's like, you really should have been thinking about this, maybe 5 years ago. And that's not really like, a network's not like that. It's more about, who you kind of connecting with, and you might be able to do some interesting things together. You might be able to help them. You might be able to introduce them to somebody, and vice versa. Like, what are your other tips around how do you think about that less reactively?
I think you're spot on, or I think the big thing is you don't network from a position of weakness
Mm,
or a position of need more than anything else. I'm doing this because I want something from it, you know, and you network from a position of curiosity, like genuinely, I want to know more about you. I want to know about what you're doing. It's fantastic that people say, oh, well, I only go to networking events. Right. So say they're an educator. I only go to networking events that are about education. And I go, why would you do that? I says, the last place you'll find me is at an education networking event. I says, you'll find me at a tech startup event, or you'll find me at an industry event, or you'll find me, because you're getting a different perspective and a different type of person. And that really adds value. And look at me yesterday. God, was I out of my comfort zone speaking to 2,000 people in agriculture and ag futures about the future of skills, My God, it was wonderful. It was like filling up my gas tank. They were smart people there, and they had, you know, drones in the sky looking after cows and all this amazing, amazing energy. So it's getting out. And if you don't like networking, and I'm actually an introvert, so the secret, but I'm an absolute introvert. I'm not an extrovert. Before I talk or I do anything, I go and sit in the loo for 5 minutes and go, okay, Linda Brown, this is your job, performing monkey time, get it done, right? But it sounds a bit like the Robbie Williams film. But I am an absolute introvert. So it's actually easier. I hate going into rooms full of people, especially if they're in the same area as me and whatever. It's so much easier going into something that you know nothing about. So I think, don't think about it as networking. Think about it as just building your curiosity muscle and learning, just learning different perspectives.
Who would have thought EY's Australian Entrepreneur of the Year is an introvert?
I know. I'm pretty good at faking it until you make it, am I?
Yeah. No, but I definitely resonate with that as well. I always, yeah, I do I like a bit of time out before an event as well, and the bathroom's perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Linda, have you got any other advice, any other last words of wisdom for
No,
the women
back
who
again
even?
though, to don't wait to be invited. You know what I mean? During, you only ever get out what you put in, don't you? You know what I mean? So, especially with the program that you're running, the connections that you're making, a lot of women will listen to the podcast, the real juices and connections. If you've got a question, reach out and ask. All as the person could do is not reply. But guess what? They might. And if they do, that might be the start of a beautiful friendship or relationship. And I think that's really important. I think people, you know, for me, I've got people that I don't talk to all the time and use a lot of their time, but they know if I ask something or they ask me something, I'll do it for them. Do you know what I mean? And I think being precious with the people that you know and selective with who you know. You know, we know very quickly whether we've got some synergy or something in common. And there's nothing more warming to your heart like that boy who was running out yesterday at the Ag Futures conference saying, I want to talk to you about my career now. And I could have said, yeah, okay, whatever. But I learned something from him. And for me, just taking the time to do that, to really work out what makes you feel good and where you feel that you're adding value, and make sure that you're topping it up all the time. And don't be in too much of a rush. When I look at the best moves I've made in my career, they're sideways moves, not up
Mm,
moves, you know? And sometimes you need to go down to go back up again. Everybody's so hung up on frickin' titles and getting up the tree. The more, that's what I said to him yesterday, the more you can expand out, the better you're going to be and the more opportunities you're going to get. So I think that's really important as well. But know your boundaries. Don't ever, ever, ever negotiate on your integrity. And if you're unhappy, you don't like it, get the hell out of there.
yeah, I love it. Wow. There's so much. I mean, there's so many one-liners that I'm like, I want to just put them up on a wall.
God. No, see, that's a waste of time. You just got to do what's right for you. And what's right for you will be different than what's right for me. Do you know what I mean? And being respectful of people's circumstances are really important. But once you know what you've been put on this earth to do and what you want to achieve by way of impact, not input, then it gets so much easier. Then you start to say no a lot because it doesn't align. The first time you actually say no is so empowering. That's good.
Yeah. We had another woman on who said no is a complete sentence, which was another one-liner that
I
I
like
didn't
that.
put it on the wall, but it definitely stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, that's true.
Because we do, we say no, and then we go on to explain why. She's so right. I'm going to take that one today. That was cool.
Well, Linda, thank you so much for coming on, Even. And it's been such a delight to be able to benefit from your insight, your wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing your advice.
Yeah, and thank you for what you're doing. It's well needed. And as I say, everybody will get out what they put in, and I'm sure you're building a phenomenal community.
I'm Dr. Nora Kozlowski, co-founder of Even, where our mission is to accelerate women's economic potential. Check out even-careers.com to learn how we support women and business to get even.